Brad Garlinghouse just stepped onto the stage at Binance Blockchain Week, dropping some serious predictions. His take? 2026 is going to be the year crypto finally explodes. And look, that's just scratching the surface of what he covered up there. So here's the game plan. I'm running through this entire clip with you, and anytime we hit a moment that could use some clarity or deeper insight, I'm hitting pause to walk you through it. Now, I know what you're thinking, but hold on, because after we finish this, there's more material I need to put in front of you. Don't bail on me now. What's coming up next is absolutely worth your time. Take a listen.
The best is yet to come. Brad, why do you think the bears are back in the market?
Well, why the bears back in the market? You know, look, first of all, thank you for having us. I think this is an incredible event. It's my first time to join this event, but hopefully look back to being next year as well. And obviously good to see you both. Look, I think crypto has gone through cycles. And when you have risk on, people are excited. They are, now you have kind of a risk off moment. There's uncertainty. I personally will echo some of the things Richard said. There are so many macro factors that are continuing to provide tailwinds for this industry that I think as we go into 2026, I don't remember being this optimistic in the last handful of years where you do have, as Richard said, regulatory clarity in the largest economy in the world. And I think people underprice this. 22% of global GDP is the United States. And this is a market that has been really openly hostile to crypto for 4 or 5 years, or maybe longer. And now you have that has changed significantly pretty quickly, but the institutions are still catching up with that to some degree. You saw Franklin Templeton on stage here, you saw BlackRock on stage. Just this week, I think Vanguard has now opened up, Vanguard historically has said, we won't touch crypto. And now they've had a massive sea change. That's just one of many things that are creating those tailwinds, and so I'm super optimistic about the year ahead. The last thing I'll say on this, which I think we'll also probably all agree about on this, is we are also seeing real-world applications where it's not just about the speculation. You're finding easier to use interfaces so that crypto isn't just about the speculation, it's about solving real-world problems. And to sustain that long-term optimism, that long-term bull market, I think you're going to see more and more of that.
What's your take on this?
Brad's laying out the numbers here, and they're pretty wild. Ever since Ripple snatched up Ripple Prime, yeah, that's the rebranded version of what we knew as Hidden Road, the growth has been insane. They've managed to 3 times the whole operation since May. That's not a typo. 3 times bigger in just a few months. But let me tell you what's really going on beneath the surface. You had all these major institutions basically frozen in place, watching from the bleachers. They saw what Ripple was cooking up, but wouldn't touch it. The reason? Regulatory weirdness. Nobody wanted to be the guinea pig when the rules were still murky and confusing. Fast forward to today, and those same nervous institutions are finally making moves. Small ones, sure, they're running test batches, feeling things out cautiously. Brad nails it with his metaphor. Crawl first, then walk, eventually run. Any massive organization needs that adjustment period when they're integrating brand new tech into their systems. Here's where the real drama kicks in, though. The second these institutions realize how much money and efficiency they're gaining, and believe me, that realization hits fast, they're going full throttle. No more baby steps. And when that happens, suddenly every other player in the game feels the heat. Picture yourself running a financial institution right now. You're juggling your bank's survival, keeping clients happy, managing everything under the sun. Meanwhile, the competitor across the street just adopted this revolutionary tech, and so did the one down the block. Where does that leave you exactly? How much time do you really have before you become obsolete without making the switch? That's the pressure cooker we're talking about. Everyone gets forced into adoption because the tech itself is just objectively better than anything else out there. Period. And look, XRP, in my view, that's going to be one of the assets ruling the planet. Just calling it how I see it. Listen to this part.
Do you think the ETF floor was overhyped?
Definitely no. Look, obviously what you were describing is all data correct, but I think you got to zoom out a little bit further and realize that this ETFs didn't exist because of the regulatory problems in the United States. They didn't exist, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks, over $700 million have flown into XRP ETFs. which is just it's pent-up demand from institutional investors, from investors who want access because they don't want to custody themselves, what have you. But look, again, if you zoom out to the macro level, the total ETF market, only 1 or 2% of the total ETF market is crypto. I will bet anybody here that a year from now, that will be more than 1 or 2%. There's going to continue to be inflows, and yes, you can take a snapshot of time and say, okay, there's a billion left Bitcoin ETFs or whatever the data you cited a moment ago. But if you zoom out a little bit further and say, okay, over 2026, do we really think crypto ETFs are only going to be 1 or 2% of the total ETF market? No chance. And so that, again, it's one of those macro tailwinds where Ripple sits in a position where we see, particularly from our Ripple Prime, the prime brokerage business, we see a lot of interesting activity where institutions that have been on the sidelines, maybe because of regulatory clarity, maybe because of risk aversion, for whatever reasons they've been on the sidelines, they're getting involved. And they're starting small, and they're going to walk, then they're going to crawl, then they're going to walk, then they're going to run. And I think it's going to create a lot of tailwind.
So Brad just said something that made my jaw drop. Now that Ripple's officially closed the deal on G Treasury, something crazy is happening. All these massive companies that were already doing business with G Treasury, they're picking up the phone and calling Ripple like, so tell us about these stablecoins. What other tech toys do you have in your toolbox? We need to get our hands on this stuff now. They're literally lining up to tap into everything Ripple's built. And here's where it gets insane. G Treasury works with the top 1,000 corporate clients out there. They're shuffling around $12.5 trillion every year. Break that down, and it's $34 billion moving through their system daily. That's not a typo. $34 billion per day. And now every bit of that can flow through XRP, through RLUSD, through Ripple's whole tech ecosystem. Let that marinate for a minute. We're talking about one company handling $12.5 trillion a year. But what happens when the next giant steps up? And then another one. You stack just 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 of these behemoths together. Boom, you're looking at $250 billion, then $500 billion moving around. Next thing you know, you've hit $1 trillion. And that's the playbook right there. That's how you build the kind of monster liquidity needed to power the entire global economy. Now listen to this part.
So this moment in the market hasn't necessarily spooked institutional capital. That's what you're saying?
Definitely not.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the institutional adoption here and what you're seeing in terms of real world payments as well on the stablecoin side?
Well, I mean, the stablecoin point you're making particularly, I think you are absolutely right that as people kind of went risk off, they stayed on stablecoins, which is indicative of, as Rich was describing, the utility, the 24/7 nature of a stablecoin, but it's also trust, where maybe years ago they might have said, I want to get into a fiat that I trust even more, but people are recognizing that stablecoins can be stable and easier to manage. But look, this region in particular leaned into regulatory clarity early. Ripple launched a stablecoin just over a year ago. It's just passed about $1 billion market cap. But now it's also been approved in, whitelisted in Abu Dhabi as well as in Dubai and the DIFC. It's good collateral on various platforms from a lending point of view. And I think that the tailwinds just on solving real problems and good collateral that's easy to move and is more flexible and can be moved multiple times a day even, that wasn't possible before. And I think we're going to see a lot of unlocks that, when Ripple thinks about this, and it's an honor to be up here with these two, we want Solana to do great. We want Binance to do great because I think we're still bringing people into the ecosystem. Stablecoins are one way of doing that. There are going to be lots of other applications, some that Ripple builds, some that are built in the Solana ecosystem, and some that Binance builds.
Speaking of the big guy, President Trump in the US, let's flip it over and talk about what's happening stateside because, Brad, you've also said in the past that the US regulatory environment is, and I quote here, hostile. So do you think that's changed for the better? And what are you seeing right now in terms of the regulatory roadmap in the United States that will ultimately impact your business as well?
Look, I think one of the things that Binance has done incredibly well, the numbers that Richard's talking about, 300 million people, they're bringing people into crypto. We all want, there's an echo chamber that we all experience of people in crypto. But the amazing thing about the passionate pioneers that are here in this room is they've been in. We just want that audience to grow. And I think what you're seeing happen in the United States with regulatory clarity, Richard earlier referenced the Genius Act. The Genius Act is regulatory clarity for stablecoins. And you're already seeing more institutional interest in stablecoin payments. Ripple purchased a company called G Treasury recently, which has visibility into over $10 trillion of payments from their corporate customers. And the number of those customers who are already, the acquisition closed Monday. The number of those customers that are already approaching us interested in leveraging stablecoins for the flexibility, for better yield, for as a trusted resource, because of that clarity, people are leaning in. We don't yet have, obviously Ripple went through a long lawsuit with the US government, and XRP received regulatory clarity from the federal courts.
Okay, so let's talk about what Brad dropped at the end there. He brought up regulation, the Clarity Act specifically. His timeline now, maybe Q1, possibly sliding into 2026. And look, this thing has been playing musical chairs with dates all year long. Cast your mind back to mid-year when everyone was hyped about September. The Clarity Act's dropping in September. Get ready. September vanished in the rearview mirror, and suddenly the buzz shifted to October. October slipped away. Then it was all about Thanksgiving. And here we are now. Looks like we're staring at next year. So yeah, they keep booting this thing down the road like a soccer ball. But hold on, there's actually a silver lining here that's kind of brilliant. XRP, already crystal clear. The rest of crypto, still stumbling around in a fog. This is basically handing Ripple a golden ticket because every product they're rolling out is wrapped around the XRP ledger. And honestly, the more I think about it, part of me is like, wait a second, I'm actually cool with this. Keep delaying that Clarity Act because it's giving Ripple and XRP this massive advantage. Every month the competition sits around waiting for regulatory answers is another month XRP gets to sprint ahead unchallenged. So there's this weird thought that keeps bugging me. What if clear regulations actually bring the masses flooding in? I know, sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. It's exactly like that moment you fell down the XRP rabbit hole. You're calculating your dream stack, maybe scribbling numbers on a napkin, and then bam, price starts ticking up. Now you're stuck in this mental tug of war. Launch now and watch my portfolio explode, or stay flat so I can keep scooping up more coins. The community is literally at war with itself on this one. One camp's going absolutely bananas, one in gains yesterday. The other camp's practically praying, stay cheap, payday's coming. It cracks me up watching this play out over and over. Flipping over to something fresh. The ETF landscape just got interesting. 21 shares dropped something worth paying attention to. Last major resistance is gone. Vanguard joins the crypto ETF ongoing. It's going to be opening up the door to 50 million investors. Index Pioneer, Index Crypto Innovator. Look, they've got the lineup right here. Not gonna lie, this is actually looking solid. Chad just made the call. Crypto ETFs are back. Meanwhile, Brad Garlinghouse is throwing around numbers that should wake people up. Crypto ETFs barely scratching 1 to 2% of the whole ETF pie right now. His prediction for next year, higher. That's all he gave us. I was literally sitting there hoping he'd drop a specific number. Nope, left us hanging. But run the math yourself. Bump that up to 3%, 4, 5. You're unlocking trillions that haven't even touched this market yet. Literal trillions, just waiting on the sidelines. If that money starts pouring in, the entire crypto ecosystem could see some serious action. Now, reality check time. Plenty of these ETFs are going to faceplant. They'll launch with hype and disappear into irrelevance. But the heavy hitters, the ones that actually deliver, those are building something lasting. Case in point, XRP becomes the second fastest set of ETFs to reach 800 million assets under management in ETF history. Second fastest ever. Bitcoin's the only one ahead. Ethereum, not even close on this metric. That's actually insane. Now with over 400 million in XRP held by asset managers, while only one fund has been trading for 2 full weeks. Like, wrap your head around those numbers for a second. That's absolutely wild. Okay, so you've probably seen this Fox News segment floating around. We're talking about Paul Atkins here, the new SEC chair. You remember Gary Gensler running things under Biden? Yeah, let's just say that era wasn't exactly a highlight reel. But Paul Atkins? Look, I'm genuinely impressed with what this guy's been pulling off. He's doing something nobody thought possible, getting the SEC and CFTC to actually sit down and work together on unified rules. And he's not just making rules in a vacuum. He's actively collaborating with major players like Coinbase and Ripple to build frameworks that actually make sense. The reason this matters so much right now is because we're at a pivotal moment where getting regulatory clarity can literally make or break the entire space. Take a listen.
Do you expect this is where financial services is going? Are the major banks and the brokers out there today moving increasingly toward tokenization?
Oh, absolutely. And it's the way the world will be, here in the, maybe not even in 10 years, maybe even a lot less time, maybe a couple of years from now. So I think that all of this modernization of the markets, I think, is good. And the trouble that we've seen here over the past few years is that the SEC, unlike historically, it never was necessarily at the vanguard of pushing new innovations. It was always a little bit behind the market, of course. But here recently, it's been almost standing athwart the marketplace, and as it's as all these new innovations were coming about. So that's no more. We're actually embracing it, and I believe that we need to be embracing it to keep the United States at the forefront.
Boom, there you have it. We're talking a few years here, people, not waiting around for another decade. Within just a handful of years, every single one of these markets is going to live on the blockchain. Your settlements, they're running through XRP and other digital assets. This is the breakthrough America desperately needs if we want to dominate innovation globally. The goal is simple. We vault past everyone else on the planet. But here's what it takes. Every single player needs to execute their role. Regulators have to lay down frameworks that let corporations and big institutions go all in without second-guessing themselves. When that clicks into place, we're looking at exploding from a 2, 3, maybe 4 trillion industry into a monster 50 to 100 trillion ecosystem within the next decade. I mean, how cool is it that we get to witness this unfold in real time? The roadmap is sitting right in front of us. All right, that's going to wrap things up for today. Seriously appreciate every single one of you showing up. Found this useful? Smash that like button, spread it to your network, throw your thoughts in the comments section. Go crush the rest of your day. I'll catch you in the next one.